tough shape. And then I'm leading up to how the union came about. One night we had a fire call. It was around 5 o'clock. One of the guys was sitting there waiting for dinner, and he dozed off, and we got a call. He got up, and the snorkel was behind 9, and he went to go buy the snorkel, and the gentleman who was getting up into the officer's seat opened the door, he hit the door, and he fell on the floor. So he got up, put his gear on, and in those days you rode the back step. So we went down to the south end somewhere, and it was nothing, and we came back. So he goes to take his coat off, he can't get it off. So we helped him off with his coat, and he says, "I hurt my elbow. So can you move it?" And he could move it, but not without a lot of pain. So I was they called them acting officers in those days. So I called for the battalion chief, but he was at home to dinner, and you didn't get disturbed. And so they put me through to Chief Brophy, and I told Chief Brophy that I got a man, I think he's got a broken elbow, he fell. So he said, he's got a box tomorrow night, it's election night. I said, "Chief, he can't work like this. Let him go to the doctors tomorrow." And he hung up on me. So I picked the phone back up and I said, "Call him back up." And I said, "Chief, we're taking him to the hospital." He said, "Get his wife to come over and take him." So we said, okay. Anyway, we took him to Albany Med, which was a no-no. You only went to St. Peter's in those days. Anyway, he had a broken elbow. So, things like that. The rig with ball tires, and we had no uniforms. Anyway, the uniform thing became quite a hassle. And trying to get time off when my wife was in the hospital having a baby. I wanted to go visit her. What are you going to do there? Things like that.
From December 25th through the 28th of 1969, the city received over 26 inches of snow. A snow emergency was declared, and there was a recall of the entire fire department for 5 full days. When it was finally over, the men had logged 9,000 hours of overtime, for which they were not paid. This was one of the final straws, and the drive towards unionization shifted into high gear.
Well, it all started with a blizzard. We had, I don't know how many, 40 inches of snow or something, and they declared a state of emergency. And at the time, they called everybody in to come back to the firehouse, every shift. At the same time, it was chaos. There was nobody that was leading. Some of them spent 5 days there. I spent 3 days. So while we're there, the cops are there, and they're in there, and they've got a snowmobile and a toboggan, and they're supposed to help us out. Then they're telling us they're getting time and a half. We're getting zip. So that really got the thing started. We started thinking about it. And there was a lot of chatter, and I guess that some action was brought up against the city. I forget who brought it up. But then right around that very same time, Mike brought this up. So hey, here we go. This is what we got to do. We held a couple of meetings. The first meeting at the Marine Corps Hall in West Albany, and then when we were there, we all voiced our grievances. And my pet peeve was being acting officer for so long. I'm not alone. And if you look at the 100-year yearbook, just about every officer in there's an acting officer, including the battalion chiefs. They're acting officers. So the city is getting by not paying us for our jobs. They're getting by not offering any promotions. I was on the job either 11 or 12 years before I was able to take a promotion. It's only because we forced them to make us to have an exam for lieutenants and captains.
January 1970. The men of the department voted 149 to 53 in favor of establishing the Albany Permanent Professional Firefighters Association. Included in the vote were the provisional firefighters actively working a regular schedule. 7 of the 8 provisional firefighters were later fired by the city for participating in the vote and supporting unionization. By March, Mayor Corning still had not recognized the union, citing lack of evidence of majority support from within the department. The mayor called for a list of signatures as proof of support, something the newly formed union would not supply for fear it would be used by the city to harass its members. The union offered letting the Public Employee Relations Board hold a vote to show the union did, indeed, represent a majority of the men. As a result of this standoff, the firefighters took to the streets to picket.
Did you really want to meet with the mayor personally?
Yes, that was the object, is so we can just get negotiations on the table. That's all we're interested in. We want to negotiate for a contract. We want equitable bargaining for a contract. We're always open for bargaining. We've always made that statement, and we'll continually be open for bargaining.
We had a lot of the politicians actually backing us, but nobody could buck Mayor Corning. Mayor Corning was the supreme boss, and right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the way it was. We had the people behind us 100%. We knew that. We had the people behind us 100% because the way the city was coming down upon us all the time, constantly they were coming upon us. In fact, when we started the union, 7 men lost their job.
Albany City Hall to see Mayor Corning. This climaxed the demonstration by firemen in front of the City Hall front door this morning. Police were called and ordered the firemen out of the building. The mayor then agreed to meet with one APPFA representative. A closed-door meeting between the mayor and the APPFA vice president, Nick Farinella, followed. Earlier today, the firemen learned that they had failed in their court bid to stop the dismissal of 7 firefighters. State Supreme Court Justice DeForest Pitt ruled in favor of the city that the men could be dismissed since they were only provisional appointees. Farinella had this reaction.
Imagine that, and they're paying a 7 guys with 32 kids, over 25 years of experience, but these guys are off the street, and the only reason they're doing it, and I asked Mayor Corning, Chief Fitzmaurice, or anybody else who wants to debate with our organization at any time, anywhere, that we can prove that this whole thing is a big political front. And I challenge Mayor Corning right now, Chief Fitzmaurice, or anybody else, to debate with our association on what's going on in this city right now.
And you think, Nick, the only reason these men are let go is because of their association with the APPFA?
Definitely the only reason that these men are let go. Anytime Mayor Corning wants to call me a liar, we'll put him on TV and we'll debate it.
One of the firemen affected by the decision is firefighter Jim Bennett.
Well, I figured they're going to come this way, but
I repeat that. The judge hasn't signed a paper
just take time, we'll get them.
Are you confident the appeal will go your way?
Yes. Yes. It's got to.
Do you think that...
4 years, and there goes the bed off the table. So there's only one place I got to go.
Do you think that your membership in the APPFA was the deciding factor in the city's decision to let you go?
Yes. I'm still not off.
I have no doubt about it.
I think so. I think this is one of their little angles.
The APPFA says an immediate appeal will be launched to the appellate division.
What could be considered an attempt to pacify the men, Mayor Corning signed a bill in March 1970 allowing for 9,000 hours of overtime to be paid for hours worked during the snow emergency. Intended or not, this offering did not prevent the men from continuing to work for recognition of the APPFA. The Albany Permanent Professional Firefighters Association was officially certified as the sole bargaining agent for Albany's firemen by the Public Employment Relations Board in May of 1970. The Corning administration's refusal to recognize the union was on full display in August 1970, when there were 31 promotions to lieutenant, only 4 of which were union members. 13 union members who had been acting as officers on an average of 4 years per man were passed over for men with no command experience. None of the men who had been acting officers were paid for their higher rank while they served. These promotions were a catalyst for division between the union and non-union firemen. The newly acting officers were segregated during day-to-day activities, and tension between union and non-union men continued building. In August 1972, the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Firefighters Union and ended the Corning administration's refusal to negotiate. An agreement on pay increases soon followed. At this time, the new union represented only firefighters. All officers would not fall under the union's umbrella until a year later. Late in 1976, the battalion chiefs were welcomed into the union at their request. Mike Romano, union president at the time, described the event as a big morale boost.